bit. I'm going to be talking about intimacy. Um, that means I might be mentioning sex today. So trigger warning if you're if that bothers you or something. Mm, welcome a demo. How do I get this thing in full screen? There we go. Boop. So welcome. If you're just joining, I'm going to talk about the healing power of intimacy. I'm going to talk about vulnerability, what is required for true intimacy. I'm talking about not just physical intimacy, although that's certainly a part of it. I'm going to talk about creating safety in relationships. So not just romantic relationships, but relationships with your friends and family, loved ones. So it's big set of topics for this morning. How's everybody doing today? It's Friday. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's gearing up for the weekend. I know I'm gearing up for the weekend. What's going on with me? My daughters are coming my daughters are coming. I'm taking one of my daughters to college on Sunday, moving in. And the other one, good morning. See, here you are. Here I am. Good morning. I'm in my living room today, as opposed to I'm normally in my office. See if we can get Juno in the shot. There's Juno. Look how lazy she is. She's just on the couch back there, like I don't know. Yeah, you can see her too. She's just on the couch, like whatever. Yeah, today I'm going to talk. I'm talking about the healing power of intimacy. What is intimacy? What's required for intimacy? Not just. I will talk about sex a little bit, but that's not it. That's not the thing. I'm talking about having emotional connection, deep emotional connection with others, and how healing that is and how important that is. I'm going to talk about holding space for others. I'm going to talk about creating safety so that we can be vulnerable with one another, which is ultimately what's required for true intimacy. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about that. So how should I begin? And feel free to ask questions along the way. I'm easily distracted, but that's totally fine. Anybody who's been on these lives before knows how easily distracted I am and how far down that rabbit hole I am happy to go. Or rat hole, as you were. I once, years ago, like, I don't know, 20 something years ago, almost 30 years ago, I interviewed with this company, and I didn't wind up working for them. I think they did offer me a job, but I went and worked somewhere else. But they had a rule in this company. I thought it was a good one. If you were in a meeting with anybody, could be the CEO of the company, could be, whatever, and somebody was like going way off topic, anybody could yell rat hole, the word rat hole, which cracks me up. And they would have to stop what they were talking about and go on to something else. Now, I don't know how that worked out, but I just think that's hilarious. And I thought it was a good idea. I can't imagine in some of the other companies I worked for. I worked for some big financial services companies, and I cannot imagine, like, even in the room with a director or a VP yelling the word rat hole, like somebody would lose their job for sure. But neither here nor there. This was a tech company. Tech companies can be, not always, but can be a little loosey goosey, unless you're IBM or somebody, Google. Even Google is a little loosey goosey. I know people. I have never worked for Google. I never worked in big tech. It was always kind of unappealing to me. Anyway, see, I've already gone down a rat hole this morning. Nobody called me on it. But welcome if you're just joining. Happy Friday. Let me get into it a little bit. I'm talking about intimacy, the healing power of intimacy and vulnerability. This has come up for me recently personally, and so when things like that happen, I like to talk about them because they're top of mind for me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got some lessons I've learned or whatever, and that I can share with others, and that's really what I'm about here. So I'm going to start by talking about core wounding. What is everybody everybody's core wound? You might say, I don't have a wound. Talking about spiritual psychological wounding. Um, and I say everybody, that's obviously a really big generalization, but I find it really hard to consider living in this culture, having parents, having schooling, even if your parents were really amazing, which I, you know, um, great if that's the case. Um, but we are constantly bombarded with messages that we are not okay, that there's something wrong with us, right? We're on social media, we see people who are skinnier than we are, or more muscular, or taller. We see people who have more beautiful homes, more money. Good morning to you. So nice to see you. So nice to see you. Um, um, so we are bombarded, we have commercials in general, like there's been a movement recently to start to move, I think, start to move towards people looking like people in commercials before people would look like models and all of these things. So there's a message that we're not okay, there's something wrong with us. So there's a core wound that most people have to some degree. We'll put it that way. And by most, I mean like 99.999% of people have to some degree. And that's of a core wound of unworthiness, right? What do we mean by that? Unworthiness. Like we're unworthy of love. That's what it is. We're unworthy of love, of true unconditional love, which is ridiculous because unconditional love doesn't have conditions on it. Unconditional love doesn't say you're worthy of love if you lose 20 pounds. You're worthy of love if you make $20,000 more a year. You're worthy of love if you buy a different car, or you're worthy of love if all of that external BS, right? That's that isn't what makes us worthy of love. What makes you worthy of love is that you exist. That's it. You exist. You are worthy of love, period. I don't care who you are, where you came from. That's my stick in the sand. That's my flag on the hill. um, you exist. You're worthy of love. That is proof that you're worthy of love. The fact that the universe has room for you, the universe has space for you, and all of your quote unquote imperfections, and whatever criteria we set up to compare ourselves, to think of ourselves as being unworthy. So we all have this core wound, mostly in our shadow, meaning we don't look at it because it's too painful. This is what shame is about. Shame is about feeling unworthy, or feeling broken, or feeling wrong. Oh, good morning. Oh, Washington State. It's early where you are. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining my team. Thank you for the thank you for the gifts. I appreciate it. 5 a.m. Yeah, yeah. I was up. I mean, I'm up. Most days I'm up at like 3:30 or 4. Not of choice. My dog, who's sleeping over here, by the way, wakes me up at 3 or 4 in the morning. But I don't stop loving my dog because she wakes me up at 3 or 4 in the morning. That's just how she is, right? I'd prefer she do something different, but I don't stop loving her. The very closest we often get in life, unfortunately, to unconditional love is, being a parent, for example, right? Where we have a child and kids act up, right? When they're toddlers, when they get older, they have different phases of acting up, right? So when they're teenagers, it might be sneaking their boyfriend into the house at night. When they're toddlers, it might be, oh, good morning to you. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. When they're toddlers, it's, throwing a temper tantrum because they didn't get to eat candy for dinner, or, whatever it is, right? We don't stop loving them because of that. It's behavior. But much of our love in this, much of what we experience as love when we get to adulthood, we think of it purely as romantic love. And one of the things I really love, um, is that my kids. This is not something you would have done when I was growing up. But my kids, when they tell their friends, "I love you" all the time. "I love you," right? To their friends, and they mean it, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing. If I was a kid and I was like, "I love you, man," that would get a punch in the nose or something like that, right? From a friend. Times are different. I think it's great to tell your friends you love them. I think it's amazing, right? Particularly if that's how you feel towards them. I think love is a beautiful thing, and it doesn't have to necessarily equate to romantic love. That's only one kind of love. We just have this weird, like, we have this really weird word, love, in English. In Persian, I've heard they have like 85 words for love. In Sanskrit, like 30 something words for love. We have one. I mean, we have words like affection, and we have words like, I like you a whole lot. But I always tell people, like, I can say I love my children and I love cheeseburgers, and that is not the same kind of love, right? Um, Phoebe's the cat's on my lap. I'm not doing anything weird down here, I promise. It's not that kind of talk today. Um, so, how do we then begin to heal this wound of unworthiness, right? Um, well, most of us, most people will go about doing that. Here's Phoebes. Good morning, everybody. She's like, I don't want to be on camera. I just want your attention. Um, uh, Most people will go about that in somewhat unhealthy ways, right? So we will look for things that we'll look for oxytocin hits or dopamine. We'll look for chemical things, right? We will get into relationships that aren't healthy for us, or we will go for approval seeking or people pleasing. That's a big one. People pleasing, right? Don't say no to anybody. Uh, don't have boundaries. We'll go about that in really kind of unhealthy ways, right? Um, there are a number of ways that we can start to work on that core wound of unworthiness. The first thing is to recognize that it's there. Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's adorable. She knows it. She's the queen of the house. Um, I'm a little bit allergic to her, so I might start sniffling or sneezing, but doesn't matter. I love her, right? Unconditionally, Phoebes. I love you. Um, she's a good kitty. Sometimes she's a little naughty, as kitties are. She'll knock things off of shelves and like watch the dog chew them up. I'm like, you're in cahoots, you two. Um, so anyway, so part of healing that core wound is to be aware that it's there. Know that you have it. Know that if you ever question, like, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep entering the same relationships? Or why do I stay in relationships that are unhealthy? Why do I, get triggered? Why do I, beat myself up? Why do I self sabotage? Those are all symptoms of that core wound of unworthiness, that shame complex that we have, right? Shame is really probably one of the most unhealthy emotional complexes that we can experience. What do we need to do to heal our wounds? Well, I'm talking about that right now. So I'm glad you asked. The first thing to do is to become aware of it, to become aware that it's there and to understand how it's affecting you. Self awareness starts the healing process. Um, there's other healing that can happen. You can clearly go to therapy, talk things through with a therapist. Therapists will look at things like attachment. This is where some of our wounds come from, right? Early on, if you didn't have caring, loving parents or caretakers when you were growing up, you may have attachment issues, right? And I'm not a therapist, so I can't talk about that in detail. And I don't do therapy. When even if I was, I wouldn't do therapy over social media. But if that feels like a thing to you, talk to a therapist about it. And they have skills, they have particular tools for working on that family of origin stuff. And I mean, honestly, I remember I was dating this woman for a while, and we were I don't know, we were getting ready to go to sleep for the night. We're in the bathroom, like brushing our teeth or something, And she just looks at me, and we had been talking about like crappy things from her upbringing or whatever. And she just goes, imagine if we had had normal families. And like something about that just hit my funny bone. And I just started laughing so hard. I was crying. My stomach hurt. I mean, I love to laugh like that. And particularly like whatever it was, it just like that statement, imagine if we had had normal families, whatever that means. I don't even quite know what that means, but I think what she meant was imagine if we didn't have, abuse and neglect, chemical dependence in our families when we were growing up. And that's not something either of us got to experience. So it was just such a funny foreign concept. Like it hit me really funny. And then she started laughing, and we were both laughing and crying in the bathroom and I'm trying to brush my teeth, which is a funny. I would have to say was probably if somebody had taken a picture, it would have been a really funny view of me. I probably had toothpaste coming down all over me and whatnot. This cat, what are you doing? What are you doing? She's like, I can't even explain what she's doing. She's like pushing against me, but like still laying on my lap. So what are you trying to do? Are you trying to evict me from the seat? I'm gonna make you look at everybody. I'm gonna make you be the star. You're star worthy. Look at the star power here, right? Isn't she beautiful? Look at her little pink nose. That's like the cutest thing. That slays me, the little pink nose. Um yeah, it was awareness that brought a mutual epiphany. Yeah, for sure. And sometimes that comes with a laugh, right? Sometimes revealing a truth or having an epiphany like that can come with a laugh, or in my case, a laughing fit. I laugh a lot, and laughing is really healing as well. And it's something I really suggest for people. Like, laugh as much as you can. I'll tell jokes. I mean, if it's appropriate, I'll tell jokes at a funeral. I have, I spoke at my grandmother's service, and um, told a bunch of funny stories that I had about my grandmother. And I was grieving, obviously, the loss. My grandmother died last year. She was 106. Can you believe that? Matriarch of the family. I miss her tremendously. I still, to this day, well, I'll always miss her. Miss her. But I spoke at her service, and I had all of these funny. She was such a character, and I had all of these funny stories about her. And I'm like, I'm gonna get up here and crack people up a little bit, because people need to not just grieve, but they need to remember that, and they need some healing and laughter. And I wasn't the only one, by the way. My cousin brought, I don't know what it was. It was some snack or something that she used to steal from him. Like if he brought it over to her house and he put it in the fridge, he'd come out and it was gone. Like she would like eat all of his, whatever it was. I don't know if it was an apple pie or something, but he brought one to and like ate it in the field. He's like, I'm gonna eat this because if she was here, she wouldn't let me eat it, and like ate it, and everybody was cracking up. So, but it was great, right? And there's a healing power there as well. So one of the ways, and this only happens in healthy relationships. Unhealthy relationships are not healing necessarily. Unhealthy relationships can be important, and I don't know anybody who I'm not saying dive into an unhealthy relationship or cling to an unhealthy relationship um, at all. But I don't know if too many people talk about this, but unhealthy relationships can actually open you up to what needs to be healed, right? As long as you can um, have some hindsight and have some self introspection about why was I with that person? Why did I stay with this person that long? It's probably because some core wounding and attachment issues, right? We get into and stay in unhealthy relationships very often. I'm guilty of this because of attachment issues from childhood. So yeah, awareness, healthy relationships for sure. Let's talk about healthy relationship. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I've had healthy relationships, I've had unhealthy relationships. A healthy relationship doesn't necessarily last forever, right? I'm not in a relationship right now. I just got out of a relationship. It was not an unhealthy relationship. it just wasn't for us, right? And that can happen, and that can be okay. And I've had healthy relationships that have fallen apart for other reasons as well. And I've had unhealthy relationships that lasted way too long. So a relationship lasting doesn't necessarily mean make it healthy. What's healthy in a relationship is there's several characteristics that I would say. One is safety. Do I mean, and of course, like baseline safety, baseline physical safety, right? If you're in any sort of abusive situation, you have to get out. You have to get out of there. And I have been in an abusive relationship and stayed in it for too long because I felt bad for the other person. They didn't have anywhere to go, and what a mess. What an utter mess. So take it from me. Like, don't stay in abusive relationships. Um, Things just get worse and worse and worse. Um, So, not just talking about baseline safety, but I'm talking about emotional safety. Are you safe to feel your feelings with this person without fear of judgment or being put down, right? Without, which is a form of emotional abuse, right? Are you safe if you have, if you have feelings, if you have angry feelings, even towards that other person? Can you communicate those in a healthy way and not have the person immediately become defensive, right? And not to say that if you don't have that, you've got to exit the relationship, but there's something to work on there, right? Something to work on. If somebody, in the relationship says, something's going on here and I'm really angry about it or I'm really frustrated about it, can you have a conversation? Can you respect that person's feelings and not, very often we get like defensive, like, oh, how dare you be angry, right? How dare you have these feelings? So, what is required in this case is intimacy, emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy is about becoming vulnerable with the other person. And I'll talk about physical intimacy as well as much as I can. I can't go into too many details here for fear of the censorship, hammer dropping on me. But I'll talk about physical intimacy because that, to me, and not all relationships have physical intimacy, obviously. Not all, even romantic relationships have physical intimacy. Good morning. I'm going around and asking people what their biggest regret is in life and care to share. Not at this time because I'm talking about something else. I don't have a problem sharing that at some point, but um, that would that would get me into big time distraction. And I don't have a lot of regrets. I mean, there are things like I wouldn't do that again. Maybe that's a regret, but everything that has happened in my life, I have either grown from or learned from or, whatever. So, I don't know that there are that. Have there missed opportunities? Sure. All kinds of stuff. Um, so, um, I, I'm someone, I like to take opportunities when they present themselves. I feel like they present themselves for a reason. So again, sometimes there are relationships that come along, or sometimes, yeah, we're working on healing unworthiness. We're working on the healing power of intimacy and vulnerability. What's required in any kind of relationship, romantic, family, friendship, what's required for intimacy, for true intimacy, which is deep emotional connection with somebody that is, in fact, healing. We heal by having deep emotional connections with other people. What has to happen for that to occur is that people have to become vulnerable. I have to open myself up to you in a way that could feel a little risky, right? That's what vulnerability is. I'm like laying my emotions bare. I'm telling you about my secret desires. I'm telling you about my secret fears. I'm telling you about my wounds. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways to express physical intimacy, right? There's, sex is what people think about, but there's also hugs, holding hands, snuggling, spooning, all of these things. They're really and really wonderful. Like we are wired for touch. Human beings are wired for touch, and I realize some people are like, I don't want people to touch me. There's some wounding there if that's the case, or you maybe have some form of neurodivergence where you can't handle physical touch, and I understand that. Um, but human beings are wired for touch, and we are touch deprived. Yeah, oxytocin amongst other things. Yeah. Um, so many people are touch deprived, and this isn't give you permission to go out and touch people without consent. That's not okay. I'm touch deprived doesn't mean I can go, hug somebody. I don't hug a stranger on the bus. Don't do that. Um, yeah, touch brings good hormonal secretion. So you get these positive, you get oxytocin, you get dopamine, norepinephrine, all kinds of stuff gets released with touch. But I think it's beyond hormones. I think it is important for us to be in the uh, experience other people's energy at a very close level. There becomes this, spiritually speaking, there becomes this harmonics that happen when we are in the energy field of somebody else's heart, which is within about 5 feet. Right? You can actually, with equipment, detect somebody's heart. The heart gives off hundreds of times more electrical energy than the brain actually, and can be measured from a distance with technological equipment, which is cool if you think about it. Like I was thinking about when they have like natural disasters and they're trying to locate survivors, if they can have equipment that through walls and stuff, and they have this, but it's I don't know if it's too expensive or whatever, but through walls can detect heartbeats, right? You can tell where people are, where survivors are. And that would be a really cool use of that tech. I don't know if they use it in rescues currently, but when we are in somebody else's space, and this is why, like, I think doing stuff with people online is okay. Having this interpersonal contact. I mean, this isn't that interpersonal. Like, you guys can chat with me, but like even Zoom calls where we can see each other are great. But I think sitting in somebody's presence is important. And we saw that with the pandemic where there was so much social distancing, and mental health for a lot of people was really impacted by that. So, um, so what's required for intimacy is vulnerability, which means people are dropping their defenses. And to do that, you have to have a sense of safety, right? Um, Yeah, it is healing. Yeah, heart waves. So heartbeats and heart rhythms will actually synchronize when you're with somebody. So your hearts will start to go and move in the same rhythm, which is pretty amazing to me. And I don't think humans, particularly talking about the body complex, I don't think we do anything that is not important to our survival as a species, right? So something about our hearts synchronizing when we're close to each other. Oh, you do massage therapy and touch people every day. Yeah, yeah, so that's great. You understand, like, the healing power of touch, even in a a platonic touch is, extremely healing. There are people, I know people who do tantric healing, so there's all kinds of stuff. Vulnerability is a risk, but it is rewarding if there's safety, for sure. Um I know people who do tantric massage, which involves, oftentimes more sexual touching, um, and it's done from a healing perspective. It's not done on a, hey, I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna get off here or something like that. That's not what it's about. Um, but that level of vulnerability, and even sitting, like, getting on a massage table with somebody, right? I got massages for years. I had a good friend I have a good friend who's a massage therapist, and I used to go to her. And in the beginning, like, it's weird for me. It was weird for me a little bit to get naked under, even though I was under a sheet, and get on a table and have this friend, touch me. Um, and then I thought, like, why do I feel weird about that? Like, there's nothing, you know, but in this culture, like, touch is, again, we're so touch deprived that we're almost like, we can get, at least I can, and some other people can get kind of prickly about it, right? I'm totally fine with it now. I went to her for years, and totally fine with it now. And there was a long time where I didn't like a whole lot of human touch. Now I'm a big hugger, with friends and stuff. And somebody told me recently, they're like, "Oh, I know you don't like hug your friends. You're not like touchy to friends." I'm like, "You haven't seen me with my friends. Like, I totally am. Totally hug my friends every time I see them. Male friends, female friends. It doesn't matter. It's a sign of affection. It's not, you know, it's not like we don't have to turn that into sex or whatever. That's not what it is. That's not what it's about in that regard. Um, who does? I mean, some people, but who doesn't love a good hug from somebody, from a friend, who's genuinely happy to see you, and you're going heart to heart again. So, um, try to honor the vulnerability. Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, it is a very vulnerable place sometimes, particularly for people who may have come from a history of some abuse in that regard, as I did. So we need that heart to heart connection, right? So in relationship, whether that's friendship or family or romantic sexual relationships, whatever, in order to become vulnerable, in order to let our guard down with somebody fully, you can tell when touch is genuine. Sure, yeah, absolutely, 100%. You can tell if somebody's like, they're there, or somebody gives you like a real, like, somebody when somebody hugs you and they have like really good feelings towards you, you can feel that in their body language, but you can feel that in their energy as well, right? um so in order for intimacy to take place between people in any kind of relationship, we have to let our guard down, and that can be hard depending upon your wounding, right? Depending on your, particularly your unworthiness, right? You're like, if I let my guard down and I open myself up to this person, they could hurt me, and that's the risk, right? The risk is that we could be hurt by this person or taken advantage of, or what have you, when we let our guard down. But is it worth it? Sure. I'm not saying do that. I'm not saying don't have boundaries. I'm not saying don't have healthy boundaries. Um, do have healthy boundaries. Don't just, I need intimacy. I'm going to drop my guard with anybody who comes along. We have to be discerning. Now, here's the thing. In my experience, my personal experience working with clients for about a decade now, um, when we hold on, when we fight people off, when we're acting from a place of fear, our wounding is telling us that it's keeping us safe. I'm keeping you safe. I'm keeping you safe from harm. The problem is that it affects our ability to discern real harm. When everything seems like a threat, it blunts our ability to determine when something is actually dangerous or threatening or what have you, right? Imagine, if you were, I don't know, if you're frightened to walk out into the woods because you think there's a bear around every corner, every leaf that moves, everything is like drawing your attention, right? And then if there was a real bear sneaking up on you, you would probably miss it because your attention is all over the place. So we have to be able to use our discernment, and that only comes when we start to get in touch with ourselves, when we really start to get in touch with our feelings and we understand where they come from. Is this just a conditioned feeling that I have from my wounding, from my unworthiness, or is this genuine? Is this somebody I genuinely shouldn't be trusting, right? Um, so in that time, if we can get in touch with that, if we can start doing some healing on ourselves and with others, and I think, and I know there's a couple of massage therapists on here right now. I think massage therapy is amazing for not just physical healing, but can be amazing for emotional healing as well. Any sort of somatic, like there's a lot of somatic stuff, meaning Um, our wounding, our psychological wounding, our spiritual wounding, a lot of that is held in the body and can be released through movement, through yoga, through massage, through tantric practices, all kinds of ways to release that wounding. That's somatic, right? You still have to do your work, you still have to do your psychological work, but I think that's really great. Stuff. Breathing, yes, breath work can absolutely be amazing for that stuff as well. I've done some very powerful breath work in the past, and breath work is really healthy. Lots of ways to do it. Um, Lots of there's trauma informed yoga therapy, trauma informed equine therapy. So getting on the back of a horse. Horses are amazing. Horses are absolutely unbelievable for being emotional. They're very emotional beings. They're very emotionally connected to human beings. Um, and some of them I know. I've known a couple of equine therapists and had great conversations with them about how it works and how intuitive the horses are, how empathetic horses are, which is amazing. Horses can sense emotions really, really well. Um, they definitely feel your vibe. They definitely feel your vibe. I've done a little bit of I've assisted. I don't really work with animals that much, but I've assisted somebody working with some horses, and it was a pretty powerful experience. They were pretty amazing. Um, anyway, let's get back into vulnerability and intimacy and amazingness. Um, you know, uh, uh, Lost my train of thought. Sorry, brain fog for a second there. I haven't had enough coffee. That's the problem. This is just my first cup. My ADHD brain just froze up for a moment, but it's okay. Um, so let's talk a little bit about what we can do in relationships to make somebody feel safe. Um, what do you call it if you think of somebody, they pop up or call you? I call that I don't know, synchronicity, I guess. That's what Jung called it, synchronicity, or precognizance, precognition. I don't know which it is particular, but it happens to a lot of people a lot of the time. Um, so let's talk about some practices for creating more intimacy in relationships. Um, One, probably the most important healing practice when I teach I have certain students who want to work in a healing capacity with other people. Um, there's a practice I call holding space. Which I don't call it. That's what it's called. But I also call it that, but not just me. Called holding space. And it seems really simple, and it is, and anybody can do it. You don't need any training whatsoever. You don't need to be a therapist or anything like that. Some people are naturally good at this, some people are not. I was not naturally good at this. This is something I had to learn. Why? Because I'm one of these people who tries to fix problems. If somebody comes to me and they're like, this happened and that happened and that happened, my instinct, because and many people have this instinct because you're good people, it's coming from a place of love, you want to help people out of this situation they're in. Your instinct is, have you done this? Have you tried this? What about this? What about this? Right? And oftentimes that's not what people need or want. Somebody coming to you, and I had this the other day. I'll talk about this a little bit. I very recently went through a breakup. It was amicable, mutual. It was not an unhealthy relationship. It just wasn't for us. But you still have some feelings about that. I had a conversation with a dear old friend. In fact, my high school girlfriend, who I'm still very friendly with. She's somebody I can reach out to and just chat with. And I know she won't judge. And I know, um, uh, you know, I've been there for her, she's been there for me. She's like, "Oh, do you want to call?" I'm like, "Sure, yeah." And I called and I was talking about what was going on and what I was going through, what I was feeling. And she asked me, and this is a great question. Learn to ask this question. She said, "What would be most helpful for you right now? Would you like me to try to give you advice, or do you want me to just listen?" and sit with you. And I was like, no, I don't think there's anything for me to do in this moment, but to process. And so just you listening to me is very helpful. That's a great like if you don't know, if you have the instinct to start offering advice to somebody who is going through a painful situation, slow your horses, cool your jets, take a step back, and find out if really what they want to do is just have somebody sit with them. And this is where intimacy comes in, right? Because we might feel uncomfortable with this person's feelings. I'm uncomfortable with my friend feeling sad. I'm uncomfortable with my loved one going through grief. And I'm going to try to change their feelings. Don't do that. Don't do that. Let them feel what they're feeling and be there for them. Sit with them. Close your mouth if you have to, right? You can use active listening. But this is what I'm talking about, holding space. You're creating a container of safety for that person to process their feelings rather than saying, your feelings are not okay, I'm going to try to shut them down. Or your feelings are not okay, I'm going to try to change them, right? You cannot do that with somebody who's going through grief. You have to allow them, you have to support them and allow them to go through grief or anger or pain or whatever. You can't shut that down. What you're doing is you're creating repression, and that's incredibly unhealthy. That's not healing. And I know people like it's coming from a good place in your heart. Oh, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. It's coming from a good place in your heart. I see my friends suffering. I want them to stop suffering. I want them to not suffer anymore. But what you're doing when you get them to shut their feelings down, and even when you communicate, oh, it's going to be all right, everything's going to work out for the best, all of these things that you're communicating, what you're communicating on an unconscious level is what you're feeling is not okay. What you're feeling is not okay. And that's not healing. What you need is, you know, you can learn, and I've learned from practice, from encounters, from working with clients. Somebody comes to you and like, I just lost somebody close to me and this and that and this and that. I'm like, wow, that really sucks. How are you feeling? So good morning. Good morning. Yes, all is well. Thank you. I hope all is well with you. I still love your name, Sunflower Shaman Sisters. That's great. It's bright and sunny, just what we need. The sun is out today. The sun came out yesterday. I decided I'm going to go out and mow the lawn. We haven't had sun in forever. I went out and started mowing the lawn, and then it started raining. I got about a half an hour done. It takes me almost 2 hours to mow my lawn. So more lawn mowing today, probably more lawn mowing tomorrow, and weed whacking and taking care of my place is starting to look like a jungle out there. But we've had like wet weather for a couple of weeks now. Sun is out. Sun is shining. It's Friday. Hooray. So I'm talking about holding space and what that means and just sitting with people in their vulnerable. Where am I? I'm in Maine. I'm in the state of Maine, in the northeast of the United States. Is sitting with people and creating that safe container for them to be vulnerable. And I'll never forget in my apprenticeship, when I went through my shamanic apprenticeship, the my teacher, very admirable. Love my teacher. She's retired from teaching now, so you can't go study with her. I'm sorry, but she did what we call held a tight circle, meaning she created a circle that was safe for people to sit in. And so there were rules around it that she enforced with an iron fist, although she was gentle and kind and compassionate and all of those wonderful things. And that's really what I admire about her, that she could hold those things, that she could hold both, like, I'm going to be kind and compassionate with people, but there are rules that are here to protect people. And so one of our biggest rules was that we don't rescue people. And so in a circle, in a shamanic circle, you're journeying together, you're doing work together, lots of stuff is coming up. I almost quit my first day of my apprenticeship. Oh, glad to hear you're doing well. Appreciate so glad to hear you're doing well. Um, so In the circle, the biggest rule, we don't rescue people. So emotions are coming up. And like I said, I almost quit my first day of my apprenticeship. I was overwhelmed, emotionally overwhelmed in my first day of my apprenticeship. Stuff just opened up for me. What we don't do when somebody breaks down crying or whatever is go over and go, "Oh, are you okay? Let me here. I'm gonna come. I'm gonna take care of you. Come here. I'm gonna hold you. I'm gonna And it's okay to hold your friends and stuff if they're having emotion, but we don't do that in circle. What we do is we witness them. We sit non-judgmentally. That is the critical aspect. Zero judgment. This is okay. This is not. It's the only judgment is this is okay. That's it. That's the only thing you're allowed to keep in your mind. This is okay. Not this is not okay. Oh, this poor person, looking down on them. We don't rescue them. You might hand somebody tissues if they're crying or something, but that's it, right? And you hold space for them. And at first, I didn't understand that. Like, why wouldn't you go try to comfort somebody who's crying or whatever? And and I'm not saying it's wrong to comfort people who are crying. You can give somebody a hug or whatever, but it's the I'm going to try to take your feelings away. I'm going to try to solve this for you. And what you're teaching that person is first of all, it's not okay to feel what you're feeling. I need to change that because I'm uncomfortable with how you're feeling. And you're also teaching them that you're not capable of handling your emotions. You're taking their sovereignty away. Um, so there are good ways, there are good ways to do this. So I really took that to heart, and it has been really healing for me. And I do this with my clients. And this is going to sound like a brag, and I guess it is a little bit of a brag, but it is one of the nicest things a client has ever said to me. And I'm very proud of this statement. I'm very proud that I could be this for this client. So I worked with this client for a couple of years. And I don't give any personal details of my clients away ever, and particularly wouldn't do it in public, but not to anybody. But I worked with this client for a long time. And uh, this client is a trans man who transitioned surgically and came from a very traditional religious family, was rejected by family, and had a lot of issues and had like people threatening violence and all kinds of stuff. Um, and I work with this person, and I just sat and I just listened to everything they had to say, intimate details about their life and all of these things, and just sat non-judgmentally. That's it, and did a little work with them, sure. Um, And this person said to me, I have never felt so comfortable with anybody in my life, including my therapist. And I cried when I heard that. And I was like, first of all, what a beautiful thing to say to me. Like you could not pay me a greater compliment in this world. The greatest compliment anybody could pay me is I feel like I can be myself with you without, I feel like you've created a safe container for me to be myself. That's what I want for everybody. That is my mission in life, is that everybody feels safe to be who they are, to express who they are in their beautiful uniqueness, in their beautiful diversity, in their beautiful uniqueness. I love that. So how beautiful. That was my first response. Like I cried. I broke down in tears when this person told me that. But then the other aspect of me was, oh my gosh, I cannot it is so hard for me to grasp. It made me so sad to think that this person has never felt this safe, even with a therapist who is supposed to be creating a safe container for them. And I don't know what the therapeutic relationship was like or anything like that. Sometimes therapy can be really harsh, right? And is supposed to be, and healing like that. But that's not my job. I'm not a therapist. I do healing work, but not as a licensed therapist or a doctor or anything like that. So that's what I really want, and that's what I really try. I try. I'm imperfect. I'm a human being. I have flaws. I have imperfection, but I think we're all beautiful and lovely in our quote unquote imperfections, and the ways that we fail sometimes to do what it is we'd like from ourselves. And we all have an idealized version of ourselves, right? In my idealized version of myself, I'm 6 inches taller and 20 pounds lighter, but that's not, maybe the 20 pounds lighter will happen, but I'm not going to be 6 inches taller. But I think of myself as a kind person. I think of myself as as a deeply loving person. I think of myself as somebody who's interested, deeply interested in other people and other people's well being. I think of myself as a safe person. Am I always that? Probably no, of course not. I'm a human being. I still have wounding I'm working on. I still have, these, we won't call them imperfections, we'll call them wounds. But that's my goal. That's my mission. That's what I want to be. That's what I'm, hopefully becoming, is that safe person for other people to express themselves. Why? Well, part of it is selfish, right? I want to live in a world where I feel safe to fully express who I am and for everybody else to fully express who they are. I am in Maine. I am in the great state of Maine. Um, Thank you for asking. Um, but I think about everybody who has held back from expressing who they are fully because society, culture, family, education, media tells them that they're not okay. Oh, you're in Massachusetts. I lived in Massachusetts for 20-ish years. It was like 19 years and change. I lived in Massachusetts. I went to school in Boston and stayed there for a while. And my kids were born in Boston. Um, so obviously some fond memories of Massachusetts. I do get down there from time to time. Love to go to Boston. Some of my favorite happy places are the Boston Public Library. If you have never been to the Boston Public Library, whew, what a place! What a place! I know it's like, oh, it's a library. It's just a building full of books. It has got the most amazing art and architecture, practically, of any building I've ever been in. There's, John Singer Sargent has got paintings all over the place in there. Like there's priceless art in this building and sculpture and architecture. And it's a library. It's free. You can just walk in. Like, how could it be better? I also love the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. I can spend days and days and days in there. So, anyway, my love of Boston and Massachusetts in general. Some of my favorite restaurants are down there too. Anyway, so I think about, if we weren't held back by the bullshit rules that society has for us, like you can't be this and you can't be that, and you can't do this and you can't do that. Think about the art and the music and the dance and the food and think about what kind of society we would live in if people didn't fear judgment, fear shame, and could just express themselves however they are. I know this. I work with people all the time. I work with creative people who are afraid to show what they're creating. And I'm like, your stuff is, well, I get all this hatred for what I'm creating, and I'm like, what are the haters contributing to society? Are the haters unable to verify? Oh my gosh, TikTok, you're crazy. You crazy TikTok. Yeah, every once in a while, if I've been talking for about an hour, like TikTok has this puzzle thing I have to drag over. I guess it's to make sure I didn't just like point my camera at a wall and walk away or something like that. That I'm actually on here, doing stuff and talking to people. I do have to wrap fairly soon, but talking about intimacy and vulnerability. And so let's talk about physical intimacy a little bit, because at least some people tuned in for that. And it's one of my favorite topics. I have a hard time talking about it on social media because I can't go into too much detail or I get censored. And there's a lot of shame around sexuality, right? It's even enforced through TikTok filters and stuff like that. Like, we can't just have an open, honest conversation about sex. And I just think that's weird. Like, it is like, we all wouldn't be here if it wasn't for sex, first of all. But and it is such an important dimension in human experience. And we attach a crap ton of shame to it. We attach shame to our sexual desire, to our sexual expression, to how many partners we've had. If you're a man, you've had too few. If you're a woman, you've had too many. Like, to this day, sexism and all of these things are expressed through our cultural values around sexuality. Keep it anatomical and you should be okay. Well, I mean, hey, thank you for calling me handsome, whoever you are. Um, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm never on here like talking pornographically. Like that's not it. And it's not like I don't want to just talk anatomically. I want to talk about the human heart and our desires and how sexuality can be very healing, right? Um, so speaking about intimacy and vulnerability, right? Anytime you're taking off your clothes in front of another person, that can be, unless you're used to doing that, that is a very vulnerable position to be in, right? Because we have rules about like nakedness, for example. So being naked with another human being is making yourself vulnerable to them. Intimate touching is very vulnerable, right? People feel uncomfortable about the way they look, about the way they feel, about the way, you know, things work. All of these things. And I, it, and I, I've experienced this in relationships, and I was always a little puzzled by it. Like, why, we're in this intimate relationship, and yet this, like, there are areas of it where there's clearly like some wounding, and in conversations like, oh, I was always shamed about this aspect from my other partners, am I insecure? I think we're all insecure. I think everybody has some level of insecurity. I don't think I'm particularly insecure. I try to be an open book. If I hold back on social media or whatever, it's because I have to. It's because of the rules of the platform or whatever. You're not insecure in the least. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that you're not insecure. Um, that's good. Um, It's hard. It's hard, and I think it's hard in this culture not to have some insecurity, right? There's so many messages out there about how we're not okay, how our bodies are not okay. There's all these ideal images of bodies out there, or ideal images, and people will come on here and like, your glasses are weird, right? I mean, I don't care. Um, Thank you. I'm not particularly looking for help with it, but I appreciate the offer. Uh, I, but yeah, I mean, there's so much focus on that. So I've had it was an interesting thing in a previous relationship I was in. um well, in lots of previous relationships I've been in, and talking about sexuality with my partners. um they're like, oh, there would be like some shy edges there, and I'm like, you can just be open with me and talk about it. And they're like, oh, I've always wanted to try this, and I'm like, well, then why didn't you? And they're like, well, I was married, and my husband like shamed me for wanting that, and whatever. And I'm like, well, listen, why don't you tell me what your fantasies and desires are, even if it's something you would never do? And I will not shame you for any of it, even if it's something I would never do. It might be something we don't have an opportunity to explore because it's a boundary for one of us, but you can talk about it. You can have that conversation. And that was so healing. That was such a healing conversation for us. Why? Because the shame was removed. It's not like, you want this, you have this desire, you're conscious of it, but you can't even share it with your most intimate partner. um and if you feel that way in your relationship, if you're in a relationship and you feel that way in your relationship, I hope maybe you could get some counseling or something around that. Or if you feel like the person's, I went through, I was in a very long term relationship, where I was shamed um, a lot of my sexuality, even just wanting to have a sexual relationship with my partner was like, no, you're just like, it's wrong that you have a libido, right? Like, something wrong with you that you have a libido. And I was like, this doesn't seem right to me, right? This doesn't seem right. And I really don't want to, I don't want to be in a relationship where I am feeling repressed. And we couldn't have conversations about it. And that was a big part of sort of the end of the relationship. Um, so can you be open to, to the conversation? Even again, like it may be something that you have a personal boundary around, but you can talk about it, right? Maybe something, you may have desires that you're like, I would never do this, but I've always thought about this or that. And having that conversation with somebody is healing. Why? As long as there's no shame involved, because there's a shame complex around it. There's a reason why you haven't had the conversation, because you're worried about the judgment. If you can be in relationship with somebody without judgment, that's a beautiful thing. So anyway, I hope everybody's doing okay. I'm gonna wrap up in just a moment here. I don't think I've and they protested over their smell. Yeah, I know some people who are really sensitive about that, over the way they smell, or whatever. I've had people, I've been in a relationship with people that are very sensitive about that. Yeah, suggested a shower. Take a shower. Yeah, problem solved. And also, that doesn't bother me. Seems fine. It's, sometimes works too. Um, but I get it. I get it. Yeah. I mean, everybody, we're so turned off by body smells. Like because we've been sold this bill of goods that, and some people have body odor and whatever, but we're sold this bill of goods that you can't, like, your body is not allowed to smell like a body. Like, you have to, again, it's shame marketing, right? It's like there's deodorant now that you spray on your genitals, right? And like, oh, this will keep things at bay. And I'm like, genitals are supposed to smell like genitals. And in fact, we're kind of supposed to be attracted to the scent. There's pheromones that are coming off of there. Women, for example, give off a pheromone called copulin, and it's supposed to be stimulating, but we learn that, oh, we're supposed to smell like baby powder, or we're supposed to smell like lavender or flowers or what have you. And I don't know that that's good. I don't know that that's great. That's a great thing. But again, like, that's an example of shame marketing. Like, I don't feel good about how I look. I don't feel good about how I smell. I don't feel good about how tall I am, how short I am, or how, whatever, right? How large my body parts are, or whatever. There's so much awful messaging out there that makes people feel insecure and shameful about what is really, really natural to them. Um, but yeah, that's one thing. Like, we cover our natural body smells with so much chemicals and so many scents and all of these things, and we lose some of our attraction because of that, right? We're covering up. All animals, I think I think all animals have pheromones. Like, certainly, lots of insects do. Dogs, cats. There are special pheromones, like dog and cat pheromones. Like, there's calming pheromones. They're not just pheromones aren't just for sexual signaling, though that's what people think of. But I have a plug-in with like calming dog pheromones in it, so that it gives off the same scent that mothers who are feeding their puppies give off. And so the dog just like chills. She's asleep right now over here. The dog just chills out, right? And so, um, we should not be so sensitive about these things. We should be really accepting of these things. Yes, you have to be hygienic, you have to be clean, but there's just so much oversensitivity to that stuff and shaming, and I just don't think it's incredibly healthy. Anyway, I've got to run for the day. Just want to I just wanted to do this about the healing power of intimacy and talk about this more. I'll talk about this more in the future for sure. I hope everybody has a great Friday, great weekend. I don't know if I will be live again this weekend. Probably not. Be spending time with my daughters before they head off to college. But I just want to express my love to you all, and I mean that. I do love you all. I accept